I had to throw on the Penn State hat for this one because we're talking about this coaching search. We're talking about this Penn State coaching search. So, yes, the firing of James Franklin happened a few weeks ago. And yes, a lot more jobs have opened up that may be more intriguing to a lot of these candidates than they would be for Penn State. So, I do want to say the LSU job seems like it's actually not available yet. Auburn, they've started their search. Arkansas started their search. Florida seems like they've started their search, and it seems like they have their guy that they're dead set on. We'll see what happens there, which I'll also make a video about that one. LSU, some reports came out yesterday that they're still in discussions on a Brian Kelly buyout. We thought he was fired. Yeah, like he's going to be gone from the program. He's technically fired. But in the situation they're stuck in, I don't know the exact details to it. I don't know what is going on behind the scenes over in Louisiana, but they they can't start their head coaching search yet because technically Brian Kelly is still with the program. Technically. So Penn State, I expect, and what I've heard, again, these are not the most credible sources, but I have seen some good stuff come from these sources. I expect a decision around Thanksgiving. I'd say before December, as teams start to eliminate from the college football playoffs. I think Penn State, I believe that they're down to a few guys, and I'll mention those guys. And again, don't quote me on this because I don't know how much of this is true. This is just my personal speculation, looking into it, just seeing what's going on around. Okay, so we'll get into some of the candidates. The first guy that I do want to talk about is Jeff Brom. First, I believe that this is one of the 3 to 4 guys that they're narrowed down to. So this guy's just a straight up winner. And he fixes one of the biggest problems that James Franklin kind of left behind and has always had. Jeff Brom beats top ranked teams. And he does it with far less recruiting resources and roster talent at Louisville. So now give him Penn State's resources and see what happens. Remember when Franklin was fired? He wasn't fired because he was a bad coach. He was fired because he couldn't get past the Ohio States, the Michigans, the Oregons of the world. I think that with the talent Penn State's program is able to bring in, that they could start winning these games if you hire Jeff Brom. He has Louisville as a borderline playoff team. I have no doubt that he'll be able to do that same thing at Penn State. So, if you look at Penn State's roster going into this season, just looking at the roster and all the returning talent they had, which now they're probably going to have to go through a full rebuild because all this talent's going to be either in the transfer portal or gone to the National Football League. I think that Jeff Brom could have taken this team way further than what they are right now, which isn't hard to do. But let's look back at the Notre Dame game. Last year in the playoffs, we blow a lead to Notre Dame. What's new? That was the James Franklin era. Let's look at the Ohio State game last year. One possession game. Oregon game this year, the overtime loss. Even the Indiana game last weekend. I think that if Braun was the main man in charge, I really like our chances for Penn State to pull these games out. He brings some fire to the locker room. Players like him. Nothing fancy, nothing flashy, just a good ball coach. Go watch his old XFL interview. I'm sure you've heard this 100,000 times on other shows. It's the best interview that I've ever seen from a football player. So, another thing is he used the portal well, and he develops quarterbacks well, which Penn State has typically struggled with. They've had their issues. Look at what he did with Tyler Shuck. He turned Tyler Shuck from a sort of a nobody. I would say a nobody, like a not a highly touted quarterback at all, to a high up draft pick in the NFL draft. Miller Moss, is he looking the best? No. Is he getting the job done? For the most part, yeah. Outside of that one weird play that he had that did lose him a game earlier in the season, Miller Moss is getting the job done. And I did think Miller Moss was pretty good at USC, so that was a good portal pickup. But I think Jeff Braun will be very good here. Another one is Eli Drinkowitz. So on some platforms, he is the current betting favorite to land the job. And I do want to say this. I've heard from some sources. Again, these are not my sources. I'm hearing from another person's sources that Penn State likes Eli Drinkowitz and that it seems like this is going to be it. It seems like this might be the hire. Again, I'm not the one saying this. I'm going off of what I've heard. That's it. So I don't know how much truth is behind it because you can't really believe anything that you hear out there. So Eli Drinkwitz, he came into the Missouri program and created a winning culture from the start. With limited resources too. I think to land Drinkwitz, Penn State could potentially find themselves in a tight race with Florida. That's if Kiffin stays. If Kiffin stays at Ole Miss, I think that Florida may pivot to Eli Drinkwitz or Jed Fish. But potentially Auburn as well, because Drinkwitz has some Auburn ties and more resources than what he has at Missouri, I would say. Drinkwitz has some of that nerdy swag to him. He not to mention he has some Pennsylvania dudes in his quarterback room with Bo Beulah, who was out of the transfer portal from Penn State, and then Matt Zollers, who also came from Pennsylvania, who was being heavily recruited by Penn State. But anyway, remember the crazy years Appalachian State had a few years there? Yeah, that was Eli Drinkwitz. That's the guy that we're talking about. He's shown that he can successfully rebuild a program at the top level too. Being in the SEC, he's done very well. He took the Mizzou job in 2020, went through some building years, which any head coach is going to do, and you're probably going to have to do with this Penn State program too. So that's a good sign. He's shown that he could rebuild these teams, which Penn State is going to have to do. It's going to be a rough few years at first because you're going to have so many portal players. You're going to have to recruit all your new talent in because you're stuck with leftovers. But anyways, when he got to the Missouri program, took him to an 11-2 season in 2023, which in this day and age would probably get you to the college football playoffs. We saw a 2-loss Penn State in last year, playing in the Big Ten, especially with Ohio State and Michigan not being on your schedule for these next few years. You may go undefeated. Indiana may be an issue. Oregon may be an issue. Get past those two, which I think Eli Drinkwitz could at Penn State. You have a legit shot to make a run there. Because I think with the right coach, this Penn State program can get into the college football playoffs and win multiple games in a row. I just think they can. I think the program has every bit of what it takes to do that. But the next year after that, he went 10-3, including a win over Ohio State and a win over Georgia Tech, a ranked Georgia Tech, I believe. Can't remember. But won the SEC Coach of the Year in 2023. Another thing that's fascinating is his 11-3 record in one-score games that a lot of people aren't talking about. Do you know how many one-score games James Franklin lost that Penn State just couldn't squeak by? Now flip that around. 11-3, one-score games. And he can recruit. Not to mention, he can recruit. He's gotten 5-star guys like Luther Burden to come in and play at Missouri. Now, you pretty much have the whole state of Pennsylvania to recruit because it's not necessarily a major recruiting hotbed, but it's the most intriguing Pennsylvania school. Yeah, you're still going to be competing with the Ohio States and Michigans, but I feel like you have more leverage than what you did with James Franklin. That's just me. Another one who is the current betting favorite on most platforms is Brian Hartline, the offensive coordinator over at Ohio State. So this being sort of a boomer bust candidate, I would, in my opinion, for Penn State, he's done wonders with this offense at Ohio State and can recruit the most talent at wide receiver, really better than anybody in the entire country, which has been another massive issue for Penn State. Is the last few Penn State receivers that we've seen had good production was never really top tier talent either. It was like Jahan Dotson, and we saw Parker Washington be pretty good. Have you ever heard of these guys at a national level? We just never could recruit great receiver talent. So he's helped recruit guys like Jackson Smith and Jigba. Oh, and recruit and develop guys like Jackson Smith and Jigba, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr., Jeremiah Smith, Cardinal Tate, Chris Olave, and many more. I mean, that receiver room, if you ever hear about it, you could just say if you're a top rated recruit at receiver in high school, just go to Ohio State and you're going to be a top pick in the draft. That's just how it works. That's pretty much that's how it's been. And part of that is, bringing in quarterback talent as well. He had part of C.J. Stroud, part of Julian Sand, part of Will Howard out of the transfer portal that year. Um, the risk are there, obviously, having no head coaching experience, kind of like what we talked about earlier. But in my opinion, Brian Hartline is a guy that elite talent can walk in the doors and take a pay cut for you to go and play for him rather than other schools after seeing the success of what he's done at Ohio State. So you're telling me if you're a top tier receiver and you're choosing between a Michigan and a Penn State with Brian Hartline, probably taking Penn State because you look at his past history with receiver talent. In your head as that high school recruit, you're like, if he developed Marvin Harrison, Chris Olave, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Carnell Tate, Jeremiah Smith, he could do the same thing with me. And in your head, you're probably thinking, I could be better. I'm going to go play for Brian Hartline. I'm going to take a pay cut because I know he's going to get me to the National Football League. That's what you want. And I also think he could bring in a lot of that Ohio offensive staff along with him, too. So if Hartline is the hire, he brings a good staff in, then it could potentially turn into an elite hire from the Nittany Lions. And then again, in college football, a lot of these coordinator hires, people hate on it. I don't think it's that bad. Look at Dan Lanning, look at Kirby Smart. A lot of these top coaches in the top programs in college football all came from coordinator roles. So another one is Brent Key at Georgia Tech. Brent Key's been another name floated around. He's a part of that Nick Saban coaching tree at Alabama. So there were rumors about Key potentially meeting with Penn State multiple times during this season, but it could have just been all noise because Key he has already kind of denied some of the rumors, saying that, cut me open, see what color I bleed. I'm a Georgia Tech yellow jacket no matter what, because that is his alma mater. But some rumors have also circulated that Georgia Tech is ready to pay him, give him a big bag to stay around, and as well as a lot of the staff over there too. But the Georgia Tech team is also on the brink of a playoff spot, so I'd be pretty shocked if he was actually flying to State College to meet with Pat Kraft and some of these guys to do some job interviews. I just don't see it happening mid-season. But I don't know what goes on behind the scenes, so I just think that's less likely. But would have been one of my top choices if it was a little bit more realistic. Another one is Clark Lee, and this is the last one. These are just my top four that I'm thinking Penn State has a chance at. Clark Lee, he's been another name floated around pretty heavily, and many fans are deeming him the best fit for Penn State. He's done amazing things over at Vanderbilt and nearly got him into the playoffs, but would he leave his alma mater of Vanderbilt to come to Penn State? He's mentioned before that he fully believes that Vandy could provide him the resources to go win a national championship over in Nashville, Tennessee. So, what worries me though is about his past before finishing that 7-6 year last year. So, before bringing in Diego Pavia and a lot of that New Mexico State staff and team that moved over to Vandy, Clark Lee's name was on the hot seat for a little bit. He finished 2-10 in his first season, 5-7 in his second season, which, yeah, you could say there's improvement there. Then look at year three, 2-10 again in his third. Then he's on the hot seat. So there's some concern that maybe it was just a tough rebuild because we know that Vanderbilt program was never looked at as an elite football program. They were more of a baseball school all this time. But there is some concern there as to, was this 1 year fluky or 1 or 2 years fluky? Could he win at the high Big Ten level, which he's won some good games in the SEC? Very good games, actually. He's beat some legitimate teams in the SEC. How much of this is Diego Pavia and the staff around them? How much of this is Clark Lee? If you're talking strictly Clark Lee, bringing a great staff to Penn State, I think it's a good hire. Because I will talk about that in every single head coaching search. I believe that the staff that you put around you, the guys who are calling the plays on the offensive side, the guys who are calling the plays on the defensive side, is arguably more important than the head coach. That's just me. So that's the four candidates that I believe are some of the top guys that Penn State would be in on right now, realistically. Maybe there's some other names because there's some guys like Jed Fish who I believe could be a part of this as well. There's some guys, if you look at G5, like Ryan Silverfield, I believe he could be. John Summerall, he's most likely getting the job at Auburn. So there's different routes that you can go, but that's just what I think about this so far. So that'll do it for this episode.